Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lion and Liverbird podcast. This is Rohit calling in from Austin, Texas, and I have with me Adeem over from Kolkata.
Hi guys, what's up?
So today's topic is kind of another discussion on how important experience is in football. We all know it's very important to have experience. It's a very obvious question actually, but the reason why I wanted to discuss this was what has happened with Chelsea over the last 2 years. So Chelsea a couple of years ago had an aging squad, and then we had our new owners, Todd Bowley, Bedard, Iqbali come in, and over the last 1.5 years, they have made a concerted push to driving down the age of the players, and as a result, Chelsea's average age right now is the least in the Premier League. So Chelsea's average age is at 23.7, and this also includes a 40-year-old Thiago Silva. So if you remove him, I think it's squarely in 23. So you could say that we have an under 23 squad. And as a result, we've seen some very, obvious things happen on the pitch. Lack of leadership, decision making has been bad in game, and so on and so forth. So that was my motivation for kind of discussing, why age is important in football. And then I think what we wanted to do was start off with what's the age at which average age of a team at which they peak, right? Adim, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, so I was just going through some data, and obviously we are referring to the Premier League. So we crunched some numbers, and we saw that most teams that have won the Premier League, they are averaging between 26 to 27 years old. Surprisingly, the youngest team to have won the Premier League was in the 2005 season, which was Chelsea.
Hmm.
I believe Mourinho was there, and you guys had a lot of really good talent coming in from Porto. And then also the next title that you guys won with Mourinho again was the season after. So this time it was a 25-year-old team. The
Uh-huh.
first team that won it was 24. The second team that won it was 25 in 2006. And then the oldest team to also win the Premier League so far is in 2010, which was against Chelsea. That average age was 27.7. So we can clearly see that the peak age uh, for the team or any team to win the Premier League is between 26 and 27. And yeah, I think Chelsea's strategy or thought process of getting young talents is good, but yeah, the implementation of it hasn't been the best. And obviously, it doesn't help when it comes to replacing managers every 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's there also.
Absolutely. So, just to kind of give you some more facts and figures, right? So, let's start with this season. The teams that are obviously doing really well, Liverpool, they have a really good, yeah, average age of the squad. So, you guys also have a young squad, but I think you
Mhm.
have a very experienced core. So, the average age of your squad this season is 25.6, right? So, it's exactly
So yeah,
at
yeah, I
the
wanted to
perfect. Yeah.
in on that. Yeah. So the thing is that the age would have actually come down a lot more right now, because of the introduction of people like Bobby Clark and Connor Bradley and even Kelleher.
Yep.
If we were to remove those guys, I think our age would be a little higher. But another important thing is that the players that we bought into the side, they replaced old war horses that we had like Henderson
Hmm.
and Fabinho, who were already on the wrong side of 30, or maybe
Yeah.
Fabinho was 29. And we got in Dominic Soboslai and Alexis McAllister, who are, I think, 23 and 24.
Yep.
Uh, and then also we will talk about the experience and other things regarding Wataru ending. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that'll be a discussion for later.
Yeah, I think you bring a very good point, right? So, if we are looking at reducing a team's average age, right, Liverpool have done it the right way, right? They have retained people who are experienced, who are still good at football. So, Chelsea's problem this season has been all our experienced folks are kind of over the hill, right? Thiago Silva is 39. I think Liverpool have done a really good job with, retaining your obviously talismanic Mohamed Salah, who's in his 30s. Virgil van Dijk, Allison, although he's been injured, they are all very experienced, but they're also at the peak of their game. So Liverpool have done a really good job. So let's look at like the other two teams that are doing really well this season. Man City, they have an average age of 26.2, and Arsenal on the younger side, they have an average age of about 25, 24.9. But all of these guys are between, about 25 to 26. So they are at the peak age to perform, and you can clearly see it in the results, right? So I also wanted to talk about some other kind of numbers, right? The Champions League. I was looking at some data online for Champions League. Again, the same number comes to the fore. Around 25 to 26 is the average age of teams that have won over the last 20 years, actually. And even if you look at something like the World Cup and Copa America, all of those again, interestingly, some of these international tournaments seem to have a higher average age. It's around 26, 27 compared to 25, 26 for the others, but basically the same story. And then this was an interesting graph that I came up with. What do you think is the most common age for players to win the Ballon d'Or? So, which age do you think has the most Ballon d'Or winners?
I think 28.
No, it's actually 26. So again, it's the same kind of bell curve that you get. So it rises up, peaks at 26, and then 28 is also up there, but then it obviously goes down. So clearly, this is something obvious, right? If you look at the data, or if you look at obvious anecdotal things, you need leadership and character and experience on the pitch, right? So that's a very obvious thing. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, the next thing I wanted to talk about is why is experience kind of important? So what does it add to a player, right? So I think, of course, the one of the things that it adds is your mental attributes, right? Your decision making gets better. Some of your skills get better. Your first touch, your passing, your vision might be getting better. So just to give an example, right, this season, Chelsea have been in positions where maybe they should have shut up shop, or, maybe they should have taken the ball to the corner, maybe we're leading by a goal, end of the game, waste some time. Instead, we try to do something silly and concede goals. So those are some, various, very obvious things that you need experienced players for. The other side of the thing that obviously you need experience for is leadership on the field, right? When chips are down, how does your team kind of respond to that? If you have a very young squad, they're mentally kind of fragile. If you concede a goal early, or if you go down late in the game, I mean, you capitulate, right? And we've kind of seen the opposite with Liverpool, and also Man United, Man City. They can come back even if you score a goal or two against them. They have that mental resilience to come back, right?
So that mental resilience was there when we played you in the Carling Cup,
Mm-hmm.
Carabao Cup. But then on the other side, when we were having so many youngsters playing so many games in such a short span of time, as you saw in the FA Cup, uh, where we exited, uh, I think all four goals that we conceded were defensive lapses
Mm-hmm.
from our end, where Virgin van Dijk was not involved.
Mm-hmm.
So Darwin Nunes gave the ball away for one goal. The defending in that counter corner was just bad from all the youngsters involved there. So that aspect of coming back resilience is there, but that grows over time.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that from Liverpool in that game that okay, fine, yeah, we did it against Chelsea last year, we did it against Chelsea this time, not last year, 2 years back. We did this time also, but we didn't have enough experienced players on the pitch for that time. A lot of the players were injured. Mohamed Salah was taken off inexplicably around the 70-minute mark. And yes, obviously there was a bit of complacency from our end, and Man United took advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, youngsters need to be bedded in slowly and steadily. I think
Yeah.
that was one game maybe too much for them, especially playing at Old Trafford and the crowd is, ready for it. So that again is another aspect of experience. The
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
experienced players you would have had, maybe if we had maybe somebody in the 30s again with Endo in the midfield, maybe we could have just shut shop and
Yeah.
seen the extra time span faded out. So
Yep,
yeah,
yep, yep. Kill the game off essentially, right? Yeah,
yeah.
that's an interesting thing. And then the other thing is having experienced folks in your team also helps youngsters, right? That you probably can also talk about that, right? Because this year Liverpool has had to rely on a crop of very young players. Also, although they are very highly rated, they are very young, but having somebody like Van Dijk or maybe Salah, not just on the pitch but also in the dressing room, help, helps them get integrated into the first team, right? They bed in much better.
100%. So Van Dijk has been a revelation for us. Now, there were doubts about his longevity and his pace and his ability after that ACL injury that Jordan Pickford just slammed into him a few years back. But I think he's been the best defender this season. Maybe he's the best defender in the world. There are obviously discussions to be had about that. Now, the thing with Van Dijk is he has not had a fixed partner for almost this entire season. He's played with Konate, he's played with Kwanzaa, Matip was there at the start of the season, and every single player was just going through some quotes. Kwanzaa, Konate all say the same thing. There is so much to learn from Van Dijk.
Mhm.
He is the best defender. Now, obviously, they will say he's the best defender. I don't think they can say anything else. But they all harp upon one point that he is not just a leader on the pitch, as you say, he's a leader off the pitch, and he controls that entire backline and midfield and the goalkeepers. Like he's always in communication. Now that only comes up with experience. I'm sure Thiago Silva does the same also. But the thing is that that leadership quality is there, and that's why it's been easy for the defense at times for us because we
Yeah.
know that Van Dijk is there. He knows who is to be positioned, what kind of a mentality you should have in the last 10 minutes. Shut up shop, go and attack, and obviously, he leads from the front because he scored that amazing. He should have scored two goals. That one goal in the final
Oh
of the
yeah.
Carabao Cup.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's really important. And the thing with the Liverpool side is, and this was, I think, 3 or 4 years back, or maybe 3 years back when we still had Mane, is that I think we had 6 or 7 captains, national team captains in that side.
That's
So
a
Van
good
Dijk
point.
was one, Robertson was one. I believe Salah was already captain, Mane was captain, and Henderson, obviously. So that's 5 right there. And you had the experience of players like Matip. You had Fabinho. Bobby Firmino, for all his flashiness, he still is a leader on the pitch.
Mhm.
He would do stuff. He would get you out of trouble and all. So I think that is somewhere where we have lost out because sure, Van Dijk is great, Salah is great, but then you don't have that kind of leadership all the time now like you used to
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
So that's really important. Now, we would also talk about experience and how that is important for a player. So I'll just give an example of that too. When Wataru Endo signed for us from Stuttgart, I think every Liverpool fan lost their head, at least 99% of them, because he was 31, I believe, or 30, coming from Stuttgart, unknown quantity really, and like we haven't seen any Bundesliga player star in the Premier League. I
Mm.
really can't
Over the
remember
last
anyone.
yeah, they've actually flopped actually over the last couple of years.
Michael Ballack, maybe.
Yeah, way back. Yep, yep.
Yeah, but I think he's the only one you could say who did okay.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Firmino came from the Bundesliga though. I mean, he did well, but
Yeah,
few and far
yeah,
between.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure. So as I said, there are very few actual examples of
yeah.
that. And the first few games you saw him struggle a bit, getting
Mhm.
accustomed to the Premier League, but that happens to everyone. But then the last 6 months,
Oh,
or
he's been
last
so
four
good.
months or so, he has been exceptional. Now, there are a lot of clips out there which show that his positioning is perfect in that midfield. Now, that comes from his experience and knowledge, and obviously knowing what the Premier League is.
Yeah.
He doesn't have pace. There are a lot of clips out there showing he struggles to get back into position or when he's chasing somebody. But there are very few instances where that leads to a goal. So he knows what to do, when to do, how to do, and that's helping him and us. Now, if you ask a Liverpool fan what their thought is or what their belief is of Endo, they'll all say that he's one of the best signings we've had
Yeah.
ever,
Yep.
at least in the midfield or in the cheap range, because he's a bargain, no nonsense player, but always will give you an 8 out of 10. He's like a Milner replacement, and since he's Japanese, he could play for another 10 years, I believe.
And he does the job that he's bought for, right? He does the job so well. Like he screens your defense so well. He's good on the tackle. He's strong. I think he's a perfect example of somebody on the higher end of the age spectrum adding so much value to a squad. And the thing that you said about team having multiple captains, the Chelsea team of yesteryears when we had the likes of Terry, Lampard, Ballack,
Drogba,
Essien, Drogba. They were all captains of
yeah.
their teams,
Wasn't
right?
Carvalho also captain? Was he captain?
Uh,
No.
but yeah, I mean, he
No,
was
Petr
definitely
Cech.
a leadership. Better check. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So full of captains, right? So yeah, a couple of important points there. I think a huge mistake that Chelsea have done over the last 3 seasons. The average age has gone down over the last 3 seasons from 27 to 25 to 23 this season. But they've gotten rid of a lot of experienced players and not replaced them. I'm not saying they should have retained some of the older players. Some of them needed to go, but they should have replaced them with a certain, smattering of experienced players. Now,
So yeah, so
yeah.
bringing up that point again regarding the replacement of players, we also bought in somebody like an Alexis McAllister who's
Mhm,
24.
mhm.
But this guy has a lot of experience. He won the World Cup just like Enzo.
Yes. Yes.
But he's played in the Premier League for a longer time. He knows what's
Yeah.
going on. So
Yeah.
I think even having some sort of experience in the Premier League helps out in the end. I think that's why a lot of teams
Yeah.
do try to go for players
Yep.
who have come from the Premier League, like Caicedo.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, obviously.
That's a very good point, because the other end of the spectrum is somebody like Mikhailo Mudryk. So he is not that much younger than McAllister. I think he's 23, or at least he's going to be
Yeah, yeah,
23.
he's 22 or 23.
Yeah, yeah. So he's just maybe a year younger, but he's played like a ridiculously small amount of games. Forget about like Premier League. He's that, like, before coming to Chelsea, he had played a ridiculously small amount of games professionally, like a very, very
Yeah.
small sample size. So you can see it in his game. He's so raw in his positioning, in his understanding of the game, in creating space for himself to receive the ball, and gives the ball away all the time in bad areas. That's something that I think recruiters should have definitely kind of put into place, but I guess they did not. You made another good point, right? We were talking about how Van Dijk has helped your back line, even off the pitch, which Thiago Silva definitely does, and which Sterling also does. A lot of the Chelsea youngsters have come out and said, like, Thiago Silva and Sterling, both of them are really good examples. They help you kind of get familiarized with the squad and everything. But the problem is their on the pitch performance has been really bad. Thiago Silva's obvious reasons. He's 39. You can't expect him to be putting in performances in a fast-paced physical league like the Premier League. That's just being naive. But Sterling is also somebody. I'd like your opinion on this. Sterling is also somebody who's good on the pitch, but he blows hot and cold. He's not
Oh, he
somebody who's a
blows,
leader on
he
the
blows
pitch.
cold like crazy.
Exactly.
And I found this surprising when you said that youngsters look up to Sterling, or at least have spoken about Sterling, giving them
Off
tips
the
or
pitch, at least.
taking. Ah, yeah. So that's not something that I would have expected Sterling to be.
Mhm.
So yeah, we saw, like, the Liverpool fans, we saw the young side of Sterling. He was coming through the team, and he was the hottest talent in England. And I must say, he has played against under some of the best managers in the world.
Yep.
So playing under Pep, I think he's played under Pochettino, and Graham Potter, no, who was the guy before that? I think,
Yeah,
or did
Potter was
Chelsea?
there. Yeah, yeah.
Potter was there, and so Sterling
Tuchel was
has
also
been
there.
around the
Tuchel is
block.
the one who bought
Tuchel, yeah, yeah,
Sterling.
Tuchel,
Yeah,
Tuchel.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Tuchel. Yeah, so it's very strange when you say that. Now, I do see some of Sterling's highlights per se, and I don't know what he does when he goes one-on-one against a keeper. He just completely loses it. There's this crazy free kick that he took recently, which just went to row
Yes,
Z outside
yes.
Stamford Bridge, and uh, it's strange. So I understand where the youngsters are getting that from, and if he does what he does, Sterling, off the pitch, then that's great, because he was a player that was vilified by the press for quite a number of years. Whatever Sterling did, whether
Yeah,
he was at Liverpool or he was at Man City, if he's spending money to buy a car, let him buy a car.
exactly.
What's the
That's just
problem in
media
that?
bias. Yeah, yeah. That's just
Yeah,
media
so,
bias.
and there was so many eyes on him. Every single step he took. I think he fathered two children before he was 19. I'm
Mhm.
not sure. Maybe. So that was a big issue for a lot of people. I mean, yeah, it could be an issue for some people, but like, the media blew it out of,
Yeah,
like, they just blew it. And he kept it so under control at that time.
yeah.
So I think it makes sense that, some of the Chelsea youngsters look up to him, and he also
Yes.
talks to them about how to deal with the press, especially because Chelsea is a London club.
Hmm.
There are so many nightclubs out there. The
Oh,
nightlife
yeah.
is crazy. You make one mistake and it's going to be out on 16 newspapers
Hmm.
and 16 news channels,
Hmm.
apart from social media.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, if Sterling is doing that, that's great, because as I said, I didn't expect anything like that from him. I mean, sure, he
Yeah.
can obviously be a senior member of the team, but if he's guiding youngsters, then that's great, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a nuanced point, right? So Sterling, Thiago Silva, both of them have definitely helped youngsters off the pitch, but then on the pitch is where the problem arises, right? Like you were talking
Yeah,
about Sterling in the last game. He missed a penalty which he really should not have taken, because he doesn't have a good record on
yeah.
penalties. He took it off
So
from Cole
Cole
Palmer.
Palmer, I think it's Palmer who takes your pens, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been taking, and he's been 100% this year. And
Yeah.
then, but apparently there is no designated penalty taker at Chelsea, which is weird, but that's okay.
Wow.
But then at that point of time, somebody who's a senior pro and he's our highest paid player, he's on like 325k pounds a week or something. He should realize that, okay, I'll let this guy take the penalties. He's better than me. Things like that, decisions on the pitch where he really should be more mature and thinking on the behalf of the team. He doesn't seem to be doing, and that's what's hurt Chelsea quite a bit, right? So
So
essentially,
this is another issue. Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
this is another issue that came up with Henderson also to an extent.
Hmm.
So there's been a lot of talk about him leaving Liverpool, forcing his way out,
Hmm.
and stuff like that this season. Now see, there are two ways to look at it. One was the Bobby Firmino example. He knew his time had come. He knew that he wasn't going to get any, like he wasn't becoming better. He quietly went away, didn't make a fuss about it. Sure, it was very emotional for him, but we knew that's his end of the season. He's going. We have to replace him. Henderson on the other side stayed at Liverpool. Uh, he was coy about his future all through the summer. Then all of a sudden he says that I'm going to Saudi Arabia.
For
And
the
then later on, I
project.
believe for a project, yeah. And he's back and playing at Ajax. And I
Well,
won't get into that. We can have another discussion about him and my thoughts on Henderson. And then the thing is that later on there was a quote from Henderson which says that he decided to leave because he wasn't sure of his starting position in the team
mhm,
after what happened last season. And you saw how our midfield struggled. There was no chance that Henderson was going to be a first team starter.
yeah,
I mean, anybody could see that. I don't know how he could not see it, especially after we signed Soboslai. We had signed Soboslai and McAllister. We hadn't signed Endo till then. So you should understand your position in the team as well
yeah,
and know that you have to become a big time player. Now, a lot of Liverpool fans were okay with Henderson staying if he took up a James Milner role because he had the leadership quality
yes,
off the pitch.
exactly, exactly.
He was 31, maybe 32, but he could do a great job with the youngsters. He could tell them stuff. He could explain to them what it means to be a Liverpool player,
Yeah.
how to go about doing stuff. But I mean, it is what it is. But there was a role for Henderson. He just didn't want that role. He wanted to play more, and well,
So yeah,
he's
that,
still playing for
again,
England. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's an interesting point. Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit. So essentially, right, you made a good point there. With age, he obviously had a physical decline, right? Maybe his pace went away, his physicality went away. But obviously, somebody like that, if you want to stay at Liverpool, you have to realize that, hey, the important skills that I have right now are leadership and character and resilience and the ability to mentor people, right? And then that should be my primary role, not being on the pitch every time, every single match, play 90 minutes, maybe play 15, 20 minutes here or there,
yeah.
groom the next line of players. And essentially, I guess that's why Southgate has him in the squad now, in the England squad. England lost to Brazil yesterday in a friendly, and of course
It was a
everybody's going
horrible
after
match.
him.
Apparently, it was a horrible match
It was
from
pretty
England
bad.
side. It was a really boring match.
Yeah,
So,
it
and
was
this was
it,
also, I believe, Brazil's B team or something. They had a lot of injuries.
They did,
Yeah,
especially in the back line. Yes, yes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I, yeah, so I think, uh, yeah, in the way Southgate at least is trying to use, I don't know whether he'll make him start. If he starts him over somebody like a Kobe Maino, that's going to be horrible because that guy is
No,
really
so
talented.
yeah, so this is another discussion. Kobe Mino has had, I would say, maybe half a decent season for United.
He's really good though.
He is good, but I think he's been pushed too early. When you have somebody, now I'm being a little biased, obviously, but when you
Hmm.
have somebody like a Harvey Elliott,
Hmm.
who's done a phenomenal job throughout the season, he's
But
still playing under 20 games.
yeah, yeah. But he's a
Curtis
different
Jones,
position though. And
correct, correct.
yeah,
So there must be other options. You can't fast track somebody. I think this has happened simply because he's a Man United player and the media hype around it. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing with Henderson, if he starts, now I don't know what Southgate's thought process is because he starts Harry Maguire also,
yeah,
and he neglects players who are doing well overseas.
yeah,
I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek is doing well outside
yeah.
in Italy. I
Tomori, yeah,
think Tomori, yeah,
yeah.
he's doing well outside, and I don't know what happened to Tammy Abraham. He was good at one time, and then
he
I think
he's
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 changed up.
been injured for the longest time. He broke
Yeah.
something or tore something really
Yeah.
bad.
So uh, I think Gareth Southgate has tunnel vision. He
Yeah.
only watches Premier League
Yep.
games and he picks people out of that. And you can't do that as an international manager because
Yeah.
you
That's
have
a
a huge
good point.
network.
I think to just sum that up, I think Southgate goes the other extreme. Chelsea's gone one extreme, not have any good experienced players, leaders on the
Mm.
field. I think he only thinks about leaders and doesn't think about technical skills or physical
But
decline
it
or things
makes
like that.
sense for him also because I was watching some podcasts earlier in the morning, and they were talking about this England's abject performance or
Hmm.
whatever. But Southgate will play a very pragmatic game. You won't concede too many. You need your star players to perform. Harry Kane magic. Bellingham could do something. Cole Palmer could do something.
Yeah,
Bukayo Saka.
yeah,
They
Foden.
nick a goal, they shut up shop, they win, and that's what international football technically is. It's not a Premier League where you're playing 38 games in a
True.
season and you can show your skills and everything.
Hmm.
You're just a bunch of players put together for maybe 2 months if
Hmm.
it's a competition, and ultimately people will ask him, "What did you win with England?"
Yeah.
And if he can lift the Euros, for example, can you imagine? They'll be considered as the greatest English managers since
True.
the 1966 World Cup winning squad.
He will definitely change the narrative if they can win the Euros, but I really doubt it, right? Especially
Oh yeah, yeah.
because
No,
of,
I'm just saying
yeah,
that his thought process is: I don't lose, I reach the
true,
next round. I don't
true,
lose, take it to penalties, maybe reach the
true.
next round, reach the next round, and then we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah,
Rather than having some great game plan where Bukayo Saka is cutting in or Bellingham's doing
yeah,
these runs and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's a good point, right? We'll definitely be covering the Euros and the Copa
Yeah.
America this year. Both of them are in the summer. Actually, we'll be covering it. It's going to be an exciting summer. Uh, so yeah, so moving on, I think the last kind of thing that at least I had on my kind of discussion points is, what does Chelsea need to do to kind of correct this? Like obviously, next year Thiago Silva is not going to be there. Maybe he'll be there in some sort of a mentorship position in the club because his sons play for Chelsea, like many of the stars, but definitely he's not going to contribute to leadership on the pitch. That's something that we really, really need, desperately need. Maybe we'll get Reece James back. He has some leadership experience. He's our captain, but he's never been on the pitch this season, unfortunately, through his injuries. But I really think Chelsea needs to invest in at least a couple of experienced players. Don't like throw cash around, but get some experienced players who can help on the pitch, right? Some kind of obvious leadership positions are going to be, in defense. Maybe get a better goalkeeper because we have Petrovic who's been good, but then he really can't play with the ball. So I think the obvious thing to do now is to be smart and get a few bargain buys, who can add leadership on the pitch. Right? So
That's right.
essentially, one of the names that's been kind of out there, a lot of teams have been kind of scouting him, is Ivan Tony, center forward,
Oh
right?
yeah.
He's experienced. He is a bit of a shithouse, right? He does all of the mental game things. He's good at shithousery and all of that, which is also important, right? To add a little bit of grit to the team. So I think that he might be a decent buy, but he's not going to be cheap. So that's the other problem, right? He's going to go for a lot of money. And I don't know who else Chelsea's scouting, but if they do the same thing and get a whole bunch of under 23 players, unfortunately, I think this issue is going to persist.
Oh yeah. So one thing that I was going through is that how experience helps a team grow. So one example was that Arsenal, they were in the title run last season.
Yeah.
Who did they sign in the January window? They ended up signing Jorginho
Yes.
because he had so much experience
Yeah.
playing in the Premier League, being in title races and all. So Chelsea need to make some smart signings
Yep.
from within the Premier League. Obviously, Ivan Tony would be an exceptional signing for them,
Yeah.
or for any team actually, because he's really good. I think he's limited simply because he plays for Brentford,
Hmm.
but he's really, really good. They need to be smarter with the signings for sure because I don't think they can be spending crazy amounts of money all over again. I've been reading some stories about FFP regulations and also
Yes.
stuff coming up. So that's one thing. And yeah, I think there has to be a bit of a clearance at Chelsea.
Yeah.
I think they've got too many players, and even Pochettino, I don't know. I don't think he knows what to do, and I don't
Hmm.
even know if Pochettino is going to be the next season. So there is a lot of work to be done at Chelsea presently. I mean, it's scary to say that because I think Abramovich sold the club almost 1.5 years ago,
Yep.
and I mean, there's still no. I still don't see what direction they're heading. So
You
it's
made a
scary.
couple of great points. The first one was about Arsenal, right? Arsenal not only bought Jorginho, they also bought Leandro Trossard, right?
Yeah,
Both of
Premier League.
them
Proven.
good experienced performers. And I'll be completely honest with you, when they bought those two players, I was kind of laughing. I was a little skeptical. That show goes to show how much I know. But these guys have been really good in a system that works with a coach who knows what he's doing out there. They have both been like pivotal to Arsenal. And another interesting thing about Arsenal is like their captain is Martin Odegaard, right? He's young too.
Yep.
He's like 23, 24, right? He's young, but he's got so much leadership. So that probably goes to show that, age is not the only thing. Some people are more mature. Bellingham is a good example, right? He's touted to be the next captain for England. He shows leadership on the pitch, off the pitch, everything. So I guess, those are a couple of things to kind of keep into account. So, question for you, probably the last thing on this podcast. So, in terms of the age of your squad, right, Liverpool squad, what do you think Liverpool need to do in the transfer market? Do they need to kind of get somebody young, get somebody in the middle, and what are kind of succession plans for maybe some of your older players?
Yeah, so there are three positions I'm really concerned about. One is Van Dijk, one is Salah, and one is Allison, the goalkeeper. Now, the issue with Allison would be that he's I think 31, so I think he still has 4 or 5 years in him because goalkeepers' ages are different, obviously. But the number two is the issue because right now we've got Kelleher, who's I think 21 or 22 years old. He's 25, sorry, he's 25. And he will leave at the end of the season because he's too good to be a
He's
number
really
two
good.
and sit on the bench. So that's where the question comes in. Who do you bring in who's willing to sit on the bench yet can put in quality performances? We've seen Kelleher be excellent this season after Allison's weird hamstring injury somehow. Van Dijk and Salah are very interesting ones also because, they both are on the wrong side of 30. There will be a dip. We just don't know when because we run the football club in like a business sense. And obviously, if, I don't know, if Saudi comes in with 200 million for Salah this season, would it make sense to sell him and maybe get three quality players of 60 million each? Because we've seen some of our players now finally hit this stride. We've seen Darwin Nunes become better.
Yeah,
Luis Diaz is good.
he's
Diego
really good.
Jota is good. So yeah, that's there. And obviously, I think we do need one more centre back signing because the injuries at the back are crazy. Joel Matip is, I think, oh, he's leaving. So his contract comes to an end of the season.
Mhm.
Ibrahim Konate gets injured every 3 games. Jarrell Ponce is excellent, but he's too young, and we don't want to play him every game because that's what we did to Bajitic, and he hasn't played a single Premier League game this season. So it'll be an interesting summer for us as well because we need a new manager
Yeah.
who will then decide on the new formation tactics. We have to buy players based on that. So yeah, it's not that easy for us also right now.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting thing to track over the summer because you've got Michael Edwards back, right? As
Yes,
your footballing CEO. That's very
he was the
exciting.
guy who was against giving Jordan Henderson a new deal.
Yep, yep, yep. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting to see how he goes about, kind of managing the team and refreshing the team and the managers. That's going to give us some more insight.
So he's teaming up with all these Bournemouth, right? Yeah, yeah. He's getting all the Bournemouth, this thing, people into the side.
Yep, yep,
He's got their, I think, technical director, maybe, and also he's looking for the chief scout.
yeah.
So maybe we'll have Dominic Solanke coming back at Liverpool.
It's funny, but I think that again goes to show how important scouting and analytics and data is becoming. Right, a lot of these
Yeah,
smaller
yeah.
teams who haven't had the resources, they actually have the best kind of technical folks there, right? Because
Mhm.
that's how they try to stay afloat and fight with the big players. Okay, perfect. I think we can probably call an end to the podcast there,
Yep.
right? And so, again, to our listeners, thank you very much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment on the video. Let us know what you think, and let us know what you want us to talk about.